In the depths of Arab folklore, there is a well-known story about a city whose inhabitants were Jinn. Because the story has Islamic origins and was recorded by Muslim historians in the Umayyad era, this legend has become a mixture of myth and history. This city was built entirely of yellow brass, which mesmerizes anyone who lays eyes on it. It's said that it was built by the Jinn for Solomon, and it's filled with wonders, jewels, and treasures. News of it reached the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, stirring his curiosity and prompting him to want to know more about it and to extract its hidden treasures. Abu Hamid al-Garnati, a writer and traveler from Al-Andalus, indicated that the city of brass was a city ordered to be built by Solomon by the Jinn. According to al-Garnati, the city is located in Fes in Morocco, near the Sea of Darkness, which is now known as the Atlantic Ocean. The ruler of Morocco, Musa ibn Nusayr, headed towards it after receiving a letter from the Caliph Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, ordering him to find and explore it. Musa ibn Nusayr gathered guides and those who knew the secrets of those regions, along with people who could read several languages, accompanied by an army of 1,000 soldiers, as a precaution for what they might face. Musa and those with him traveled through the desert for 40 days, but when he returned from that trip, he discovered that 2 years had already passed. The legend says that he and those with him headed to the western desert until they reached a wide valley. When they climbed the valley, the walls of the city of brass appeared to them. But the strange thing is that those walls and the city itself did not appear to them at the beginning of their descent into the valley, but appeared after they climbed the valley after crossing it. When they reached the city walls, they pitched their tents. Musa bin Nusayr ordered one of his soldiers to search for a gate in the wall and see if there were any signs of life by circumnavigating the city. It took him 7 days to complete a full circle around the city walls, but he found neither a gate nor any trace of life. So Musa ordered the soldiers to dig under the city wall until they reached water. They found that the city walls were firmly rooted in the water, indicating that they might extend underground and were securely fixed. They realized that the only way to enter was by climbing over its massive walls. Then Musa ordered the construction of towering towers at each corner of the walls so they could enter the city. But some accounts say they used ladders similar to those used in besieging castles. After finishing the installation of the siege ladders, Musa ibn Nusayr appointed a caller to announce among the soldiers that whoever climbed to the top of the city wall would receive 1,000 dinars. A brave man stepped forward and ascended to the top, but upon reaching it, he laughed, clapped his hands, behaved as if insane, and threw himself into the city. A great commotion ensued, with terrifying noises resembling the screams of women mixed with thunder and lightning, and those voices continued for 3 days and nights before subsiding. When they called out for the man from all sides of the city and received no response, they lost all hope of receiving answers from him. Once again, Musa appointed a caller who called out to the soldiers and said, "By the prince's order, whoever goes and climbs to the top of the wall will be given 2,000 dinars. Another brave man emerged and said, "I will climb to the top of the wall." So the prince ordered to give him 2,000 dinars. He took them, and the prince advised him, saying, "Don't do as the other one did. Inform us of what you see, and don't descend to them and leave your companions." He promised them that. But when he climbed and looked over the city, he laughed, clapped his hands, and threw himself into the city while everyone shouted to him, "Don't do it." But he did not pay attention to them and went on. Again, they heard great noises for 3 days and nights. Then it stopped. Out of fear, his soldiers requested to leave. Musa replied, saying, "Shall we leave from here without knowing anything about this city? How will I respond to the caliph? What if he orders my execution?" He then said, "Whoever climbs will be given 10,000 dinars. A brave man volunteered and said, "I will climb, but tie a strong rope around my waist and hold one end with you. When I attempt to throw myself into the city, stop me and pull me back to you." They did so, and the man climbed. When he looked over the city, he laughed and threw himself. They pulled him back by the rope. The man met a tragic fate, with one half outside the city and the other half inside. Terrifying voices echoed in the city of brass for another 3 days. At that moment, Prince Musa despaired of knowing anything about the city from the inside and said, "Perhaps there are Jinn in the city of brass who take anyone who looks upon the city." He ordered his soldiers to leave, and they marched behind the city. On the way, they discussed what might have caused what happened to the soldiers when they climbed. The leader of the guard answered that they may have seen Jinn in the form of beautiful giant women, enticing them with their hands. Therefore, the soldiers leaped without fear, or maybe they had found a great treasure or an enchanting paradise. In their return journey, they saw white marble tablets, each about 20 cubits long, with the names of kings, prophets, pharaohs, conquerors, giants, commandments, and admonitions inscribed on them, as well as the prophets and all the kings of the earth. Among them were scholars who could read every language, so they copied what was on those tablets. As they advanced, the desert transformed into green lands with springs and rivers, as if they had entered a hidden paradise on earth. Then, at a distance, they saw the figure of a veiled man inside a mirror-shaped panel with a brass frame, speaking with a thunderous voice, warning them not to proceed further, as there was no way for humans beyond him. So Prince Musa said, "This is a lush land abundant with trees, plants, and water. How could people perish here?" He then commanded a group of his army to enter that land. Suddenly, swarms of ant-like creatures, as fierce as lions, leaped upon them from among the trees, hunting down the men and their horses. They then approached the army until they reached the mirror, where they halted, unable to cross it, as if there was an invisible barrier preventing them. Terrified of what they witnessed, the soldiers decided not to attempt to enter, and instead turned towards the east. There, they found many trees and a great lake to rest. It was mentioned in the letter sent by Musa to Abdul Malik ibn Marwan after the end of the journey. "I continued until I reached the lake at sunset. It was about a mile wide. Then, we saw a man standing on the water, so we called out to him, 'Who are you?' He replied, 'I am a man from the Jinn. Solomon son of David imprisoned my brother in this lake, so I have come to see his condition.' We asked him, 'What makes you stand on the surface of the water?' He said, 'I heard a voice, thinking it was the sound of a man who comes to this lake once every year. This must be the time of his coming.' We asked, 'Who do you think he is?' He replied, 'I do not know, but he is veiled and enters our world from a strange mirror.' Then, he disappeared from our sight, and we could not ascertain where he went. So, we spent that night on the shore of the lake, and the next day, we took the road that led us to the city of Kairouan, where we stayed. When Moses returned, some historical references suggest that he fabricated a lie about entering the city and completing the mission out of fear of punishment from the caliph. The Persian historian Ibn al-Faqih al-Hamadani mentioned that the city is real and could be the mythical city of Atlantis, but it is trapped in a parallel world. When it appeared to Moses, the moon was eclipsed. The story goes that when Moses' army arrived, they found 25 gates to the city. When the first man climbed the city wall, nothing happened to him, but he remained amazed by the city filled with treasures and jewels for an hour. Then he announced that he would withdraw the ladder to descend from the city's side and open one of the gates for them. A gate opened for them, and half the army remained outside, while the other half entered with Moses into the city. They began gathering its treasures until they spotted a giant luxurious palace in the city center. Curiosity led them to enter, where they found a princess guarded by statues standing on either side. Even the strange princess was like a statue on her throne, not moving or speaking, yet her eyes were open. When they approached her, her mouth opened, and she spoke with a voice resembling a lion's roar, telling them to leave what they had gathered from the city and depart in peace. Some of Moses' soldiers then approached her, drawing their swords. At that moment, the room turned into a dark place with walls inscribed with talismans and magical Arabic script. The woman was wearing traditional Arab attire and whispered incomprehensible words. The soldiers who had withdrawn their swords were turned into pieces of jewelry. Then everything returned to normal. The woman remained seated on her throne, motionless. Moses and the remaining soldiers were stunned and in a state of shock from what they had witnessed. The woman then moved her hand, gesturing towards the door, urging them to leave. As the door opened by itself, Moses and the soldiers snapped out of their daze and began running out of the city, discarding all the treasures they had collected on their way in. As the last soldier exited, the door slammed shut behind them with force, and the city vanished into a sudden sandstorm, taking with it every trace of its existence. In this version of the legend, when Moses and those with him left the city, they continued their journey along the road they found until they reached the strange man inside the mirror. However, what's different here is that they then went to the lake and found bottles inside it sealed with talismans. When some of the soldiers swam and began breaking the bottles, fiery knights on horses flew out into the sky, saying in a frightening voice, "I swear not to return to the earth, O one delegated by God." Perhaps they thought Moses imprisoned them, or that he was Solomon who released them from their prison. So Moses called the soldiers and forbade them from what they were doing, saying, "We should not release the sealed jinn, for they have been sealed because they are rebellious, and they have been imprisoned for a valid reason, and perhaps they will harm us afterwards." Then Moses and his army continued their journey until they reached the city of Al-Kairouan, where their extraordinary journey ended. It is worth mentioning that some books, like Kitab al-Ibar wa Diwan al-Mubtada'i wa al-Khabar by Ibn Khaldun, mention that this city is located in the desert of Siljamasa in Morocco. However, many travelers and traders have journeyed through this desert repeatedly, and never found this city, or even heard of it at all. Whether Moses entered it or not, the part that raises the most questions is whether the Jinn really built it for Solomon. We all know that there are the lesser and greater keys of Solomon, and the term Jinn in Arabic always refers to devils. So the rumors of the city might be true, considering that all people who mention this city are historians from the Umayyad era, and according to its location near the Atlantic Ocean, it might actually be the missing city of Atlantis. Atlantis originated from Plato's dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, and King Solomon is traditionally believed to have lived during the 10th century BC, around 970–931 BC. According to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful and advanced civilization said to be located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, specifically in the Atlantic Ocean, near the Azores and Canary Islands. This location aligns with the city of Yellow Brass in the Western Sahara, near the Atlantic Ocean. So it's possible that Plato was talking about the city that, according to Arabic folklore, King Solomon ordered the Jinn to build, which later became known as Atlantis. This area was not always a desert, but had a river connected to the Atlantic Ocean. In the country of Mauritania, in the western region of the Sahara, an imposing structure known as the Rishat structure, or the Eye of the Sahara, has captured the attention of historians, archaeologists, and even astronauts. NASA satellites have mapped the crater-like area to be 25 miles in diameter, similar in size to the metropolitan area of Paris. The rings of the structure bear a resemblance to the described structure of the capital of Atlantis, following a 3:2 ring ratio. It is theorized that the Rishat structure is what remains of the lost civilization of Atlantis. Interestingly, the Sahara wasn't always a desert. Researchers have found evidence of a once larger river named the Tamanrasset, similar in magnitude to the Nile, capable of sustaining agriculture, transportation, and trade. This river is believed to have originated from the Atlas Mountains, flowing south toward the Rishat structure, before turning west and emptying into the Atlantic. Although there is no visible evidence of this river on the surface of the desert, its existence aligns with the location mentioned in Plato's Timaeus, regarding the capital of Atlantis. It is hard to believe that anyone has seen the lost Atlantis, but if indeed Atlantis once thrived as an advanced civilization, one might wonder why it ultimately met its demise, unless the city was not inhabited by humans in the first place.